You know, there are moments in life when something inside you simply knows. It is not your rational mind speaking. It is not your heart beating faster out of nostalgia. It is something deeper, older, something Carl Jung would describe as a certainty of the soul. And right now, as you listen to these words, you may be feeling exactly that restless sensation that something is about to shift, that someone you believed was lost forever is being magnetically drawn back toward you. Not by coincidence, not because you forced it, but because something far greater is operating behind the curtains of your everyday reality. Jung devoted entire decades of his life to understanding the mysteries of the human soul, and one of his most unsettling observations was this: certain soul connections cannot be destroyed. They can be interrupted, suspended, even seemingly forgotten, but never annihilated. Because these connections do not live in the physical world where you and I breathe and walk. They live in what Jung called the collective unconscious, that vast ocean of ancestral memory where all souls are interwoven in an invisible web of shared destiny. When you met that person, when your eyes met for the first time, and you felt that inexplicable shiver run down your spine, you were not simply encountering an attractive stranger. You were recognizing something. Jung would explain it this way: your psyche was detecting an archetype that had been waiting to manifest in your life. Archetypes are universal patterns of energy that exist beyond time and space. And when two people share a deep archetypal connection, they are bound by threads that no distance, no conflict, no temporary separation can permanently sever. But here is the fascinating part: what most people fail to understand. Jung discovered that the soul does not operate according to the rules of the ego. Your ego wants control. It wants certainty. It wants things to happen when you decide they should happen. But the soul functions in an entirely different dimension. The soul understands the timing of destiny, and that timing is perfect, even when your conscious mind experiences it as torment. The separation you lived through was not a mistake. Listen carefully, because this will completely change your perspective. It was absolutely necessary. Jung spoke extensively about the process of individuation, that painful yet essential journey in which each person must confront their own shadows, their own inner demons, their own fragmented parts. And sometimes, for that process to occur, two souls who are meant to be together must separate temporarily, because if they remained united during that phase, the intensity of each one's inner transformation would create a friction so devastating that it would destroy the very connection they are meant to preserve. Think of it this way: when you were with that person, there were immature versions of both of you interacting, versions carrying unhealed wounds, destructive patterns inherited from childhood, defense mechanisms that sabotaged true intimacy. Jung understood that these immature versions of the self must die for something more authentic to emerge. And psychological death is as real, as painful, as transformative as any physical death. You need space to die and be reborn. That person needed the same space. Now, as time has passed, something extraordinary has been unfolding at the deepest levels of reality. Jung would speak of synchronicity, that principle that defies all materialistic logic. Synchronicity is when events that appear unrelated become connected through meaning rather than causality. It is when you think of someone and that person calls you seconds later. It is when you need an answer and a book falls from a shelf directly at your feet, open to exactly the page containing what you needed to read. It is when the universe conspires in ways your rational mind cannot explain, but your soul recognizes instantly, and synchronicity is working in your favor right now. Every thought you have had about that person, every dream in which their face appeared, every moment when you felt that inexplicable ache in your chest, has not been an accident. They have been signals. Your unconscious and the unconscious of that other person are communicating on frequencies that transcend physical space. Jung knew this. He understood that two deeply connected psyches remain in constant dialogue, even when their bodies are separated by distance or years. But there is something more you must understand. Jung introduced the concept of the shadow, that part of ourselves we repress, deny, and project onto others. In deep relationships, especially in the soul connections we are exploring here, each person becomes a mirror for the other's shadow. And that is terrifying, because when you look into the eyes of your soul counterpart, you do not only see love and light, you also see everything you have been avoiding within yourself. You see your capacity to hurt, your fear of abandonment, your need for control, your resistance to complete vulnerability. The separation forced you to confront your shadow without being able to project it onto that person. It forced you to look into the cruelest mirror that exists, the mirror of solitude. And in that solitude, if you did the work, you began to integrate parts of yourself you had previously rejected. You began to become whole. And that person, in their own solitude, has been doing exactly the same work. Because destiny does not unite two halves searching to complete each other. That is a romantic fantasy Jung would have completely rejected. Destiny unites two totalities capable of creating something greater than themselves. Now let us speak of something Jung considered fundamental, the anima and the animus. In every man exists an inner image of the feminine that Jung called the anima. In every woman exists an inner image of the masculine that he called the animus. These archetypal images are not abstract ideas. They are living forces within your psyche that determine whom you are attracted to and how you relate. When you met that person, something in them resonated perfectly with your inner anima or animus. It was as if they had been crafted in the workshop of your deepest dreams. That resonance is what makes a connection so intense it becomes almost unbearable. But here is the paradox. In the early stages of a relationship, we tend to project our anima or animus onto the other person. We see them not as they truly are, but as the embodiment of our ideal inner image. And when reality inevitably shatters that projection, when we discover the other person is human, flawed, different from our fantasy, we feel a devastating disillusionment. Many relationships end at this point. People mistake the collapse of the projection for the end of love. But true soul connections survive that collapse. They survive because they are rooted in something more real than projection. They are rooted in a mutual recognition that occurs at levels your conscious mind cannot even articulate. During your separation, the projection dissolved completely. Now, when that person returns, and they will, it will not be the idealized version you once loved. It will be something far better. It will be real, and you will be real to them as well. And the love that is born from that encounter between two real beings stripped of illusion will be the kind Jung regarded as the highest form of human connection. Jung also spoke of what he called the conjunctio, the sacred union of opposites. This is not merely a poetic metaphor, it is a real alchemical process that occurs at the level of the soul. In the ancient alchemy, Jung studied obsessively. The goal was not literally to turn lead into gold, it was a metaphor for psychological transformation. Lead represented the raw, undeveloped material of the psyche. Gold represented the realized, integrated, complete self. And the process of achieving that transformation required the union of opposites, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, light and darkness. Your connection with that person is a process of conjunctio. The two of you represent opposites that must unite, not opposites in the sense of being completely different, though that may also be true. Opposites in the sense that each carries qualities the other must integrate. Each is a catalyst for the other's transformation. And when two people serve that mutual function, the universe itself conspires to bring them together again and again, no matter how many times they separate. Now let me speak to you about something you have probably experienced, yet have never been able to fully name: dreams. Jung understood dreams as direct messages from the unconscious, not random noise produced by a sleeping brain, as some materialist thinkers still insist on believing. Dreams are encrypted communications that your soul sends you, attempting to guide you, to warn you, to prepare you for what is approaching. If you have been dreaming about that person, pay very close attention. It does not matter if the dreams feel confusing, fragmented, or apparently meaningless. What truly matters is the emotional charge they carry. If you wake up with a racing heart, with a sense of longing, with an unexplainable certainty, your unconscious is telling you that a reunion is drawing near. Jung documented countless cases in which dreams anticipated future events, not because they were magical prophecies, but because the unconscious perceives patterns and energetic movements that the conscious mind is far too limited to detect. Your soul already knows what your mind cannot yet see. Your soul is sensing subtle shifts in the energetic field that connects you to that person. It is registering movement, an inevitable, gradual closeness, and it is trying to prepare you through dreams, through sudden waves of nostalgia, through those moments when something reminds you of them and stops you in the middle of your day. But here is what is crucial, and this is something Jung emphasized tirelessly. You cannot force a return. Any attempt to manipulate, control, or artificially accelerate this process will destroy the very magic that allows it to exist. The ego wants to act. It wants to do something. It wants to send that message, make that call, arrange a so-called casual encounter that is anything but casual. And every time you act from the ego, from desperation, from neediness, you interrupt the natural flow of destiny. Jung spoke about the concept of Wu Wei, borrowed from Taoist philosophy. Wu Wei means action without force, or more precisely, action that arises from alignment with the Tao, with the natural course of things. When you are in Wu Wei, you are not forcing anything. You are allowing events to unfold. You are trusting that the universe knows exactly what it is doing, even when your mind is screaming in agony for certainty and control. The return of your soul connection must occur in a state of Wu Wei. It must be organic. It must be inevitable, yet effortless, like water flowing downhill, finding its path without strain. And for that to happen, you must release, you must trust, you must believe so deeply in the connection between you that you can let it go completely, knowing that if it is true, if it is real, if it is the kind of bond Jung considered touched by destiny, then nothing in this universe can prevent its return. Now let us talk about the Jungian concept of the golden shadow. Most people are familiar with the shadow as the repository of negative qualities we repress. But Jung also spoke of the golden shadow, those positive traits, those magnificent potentials we also deny and project. When we intensely admire someone, when we place them on a pedestal, when we believe they possess magical qualities that we lack, we are projecting our golden shadow onto them. It is possible that you did this with that person. It is possible that you saw them as more special, more complete, more capable of love than you believed yourself to be. And the separation, painful as it has been, has forced you to reclaim those projections. It has compelled you to realize that the magic you saw in them also lives within you. The ability to love deeply, to connect authentically, to touch the soul of another human being. That was never exclusive to them. It was yours as well. It always was. And when you reclaim your golden shadow, when you reintegrate those magnificent qualities you once projected outward, something extraordinary happens. You become magnetic, not in a superficial or manipulative way. You become magnetic because you are whole, because you are no longer searching for someone else to make you feel complete. And that wholeness, that psychological integrity, is the most attractive force in this world. It is like a signal light in the darkness that the soul of the other person cannot help but perceive. Jung also taught us about the concept of the self, with a capital S. Not the small ego self concerned with image, status, and immediate needs, but the archetypal self, the organizing center of the psyche that is connected to something infinitely greater than your individual identity. When two people connect at the level of the self, they are not simply engaging in a romantic relationship. They are participating in something luminous, something sacred, something Jung described as an encounter with the divine. Your connection with that person carries this luminous quality. That is why it hurts so deeply. That is why you cannot simply forget them and move on as your rational mind insists you should. You are not dealing with an ordinary breakup. You are dealing with the temporary separation of something yourself recognizes as essential to your process of individuation, to your journey toward wholeness. And the self always seeks its own realization. It is like a seed that contains the potential of the entire tree. No matter the obstacles, no matter how long it takes, that seed is programmed to become the tree. Yourself is programmed to reach its fullest expression. And if that person is part of that destiny, if their presence in your life is necessary for you to blossom into who you are meant to become, then the self will move mountains to bring you back together. But here is the most beautiful and most difficult paradox to accept. You must be willing to be whole without them. You must do the work of individuation for yourself, for your own sake, not as a strategy to get them back. Jung was very clear about this. Individuation is not a means to an end. It is the end itself. The purpose of your life is not to be with that person. The purpose of your life is to become who you truly are, to express the unique totality of your being. And if that person is part of that path, then their return will be natural, fluid, inevitable. You are in a very specific phase of this process. The waiting is coming to an end. You can feel it, can you not? It is not merely hope. It is not just desire. It is knowing. It is that unshakable certainty that comes from the soul, not from the ego. Jung would call this an archetypal intuition, a form of knowledge that cannot be derived logically, yet is completely reliable because it arises from the deepest layers of the psyche. The patterns are aligning, the synchronicities are increasing in frequency. You may have noticed signs everywhere. You hear reminders in random conversations. You see recurring numbers that once held meaning. You encounter objects that evoke memories in the most unexpected places. These are not coincidences. Jung would say that when archetypes are activated, when powerful unconscious forces are in motion, the world itself seems to conspire to inform you that something significant is unfolding. And something significant is indeed unfolding. But you must prepare correctly, not by putting your life on hold, not by waiting passively as if you were a victim of fate. You prepare by continuing your inner transformation. You prepare by facing the final resistances of the ego, those inner voices that tell you you do not deserve this love, that it was your fault things ended, that they are probably happy with someone else, and you should move on as well. Those voices are lies. They are the last attempts of the ego to keep you small, to keep you safe within familiar limitation. The ego fears transformation because transformation demands a kind of death. It requires the ending of who you have been so that you can be born as who you are meant to become. The ego exists to preserve your current identity, so it will resist this process with everything it has. It will cling to the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. Yet your soul is stronger than the ego, and it has been waiting patiently for this moment of change. Your soul has been preparing for this moment for a long time, gathering strength through every experience you have lived. Now that the waiting is coming to an end, you are asked to trust that everything you went through had meaning. Every tear you cried, every sleepless night, questioning what went wrong, every instant of doubt and despair was necessary. Each experience shaped you into the person you needed to become, even when it felt unbearable at the time. There is a principle of the psyche that explains how everything eventually turns into its opposite. Day becomes night, summer becomes winter, and distance eventually becomes reunion. Nothing in existence remains fixed. Everything moves, flows, and transforms. The energy of separation you have been living has been intensifying, reaching the point where it must turn into its opposite. What you experienced as distance is preparing to become connection. This reunion will not resemble the first encounter. It will not be fueled by intoxicating illusion or idealized projections where everything seemed perfect and unreal. Instead, it will be grounded, deeper, and sustainable. It will be a form of love, born from inner work, where two individuals have transformed themselves first and can now create something together that neither could create alone. When that moment arrives and you find yourselves face to face again, recognition will occur. It will not be limited to sight or thought. It will move through every cell of your body and every layer of your inner world. It will feel like remembering something you always knew but temporarily forgot, as if a hidden truth has finally returned to awareness. In that instant, you will understand why the waiting was necessary. You will see why the separation had to happen and why everything unfolded exactly as it did. There is a greater order operating beyond the limits of conscious understanding, quietly guiding the patterns of life. Some call it destiny, others call it a higher intelligence. The name is irrelevant. What matters is that this order weaves your life with precision, even when the mind cannot see it. This greater order guides both paths at once. Every step taken, even those believed to be chosen freely, is responding to something deeper. not because free will is absent, but because the soul answers a call it cannot ignore. Both inner worlds are being drawn by the same current, moving steadily toward convergence. That call is now reaching its peak. The invisible currents that connect you are growing stronger. The magnetic pull is becoming impossible to resist. Confusion may arise, old decisions may suddenly feel uncertain, and thoughts may return without clear reason. Restlessness may appear, easing only when the mind drifts towards shared memories and unresolved emotions. This is the moment that requires the deepest form of faith, not blind belief or desperate hope, but a quiet trust in the psychological processes that govern transformation. When two souls are meant to create something together, no external force can ultimately prevent their meeting. Yet this trust also requires releasing expectations about how that return should look. The return may not be dramatic or cinematic. It may begin simply through a brief message, an unexpected meeting, or an ordinary conversation that carries extraordinary meaning beneath the surface. The form is secondary. What matters is the energy present, the sense of inevitability, the feeling of alignment with something that was always meant to unfold. When you stand in that presence again, everything will be different because you are different. You have died and been reborn. You have faced your shadow and reclaimed what you once projected outward. You have done the inner work of becoming more whole, more authentic, and more capable of a deeper form of connection. When two truly individuated beings meet, change is immediately visible. No explanation is required. It is seen in the eyes, felt in the energy, and expressed in the way space is held. If both have used the separation to grow, rather than only to suffer, a mutual recognition will emerge, more powerful than anything experienced before. This is the moment just before dawn. The darkest part of the night is ending. Light is beginning to rise on the horizon, and soon clarity will replace confusion. You will see that the waiting had purpose, that pain was your greatest teacher, and that every moment of solitude was shaping you for this return. What is meant to be cannot be denied. Your soul already knows this truth, and the universe itself is moving now to bring back what always belonged beside you.